This is Sarah Milligan with the Oklahoma State University Library Oral History Research Program. I'm here at the Chilocco reunion on the Chilocco campus. Today's date is June 1st, 2018. White rabbit right now. I'm here with Nancy Elliott and Ramona McCready. Did I say both of those names correctly?
McCready.
McCready, okay. I knew I should have asked you about your last name too, pronunciation.
And that's C-R-A-D-Y. McCready.
McCready. Ramona McCready and Nancy Elliott. And we're talking about their time at Chilocco as students. So now we're just ready to talk. So I'd like to start with just a little bit of background information from either one of you, maybe. So a little bit about maybe where you're from or anything you want to talk about your family or anything like that. Just sort of set up a little bit before you ended up coming to Chilocco. So you all can either vie for the chance to go first or...
Okay, how we came to be there?
Just a little bit about... if there's anything you want to talk about, like where are you from Oklahoma? Are you from other places? Those sorts of things.
I am from near Chilocco, Oklahoma. I'm a Cherokee Indian. My mother was full-blood Cherokee. She died when she was 23, and I was 2. And she left my 2 brothers and me. I went to live with my father's family, the white side. And I'm so grateful that they were there for me. I knew a family. I lived with my grandfather, an uncle, and my aunt. And my father was working in Tulsa. He would come down once a month. But we moved to Tulsa. We lived on a farm. We moved to Tulsa when I was about 8. And I was put in public school there. My aunt was going to University of Tulsa to get a teaching degree. And when she received that, she accepted a job in New Mexico. So my father was left with 3 children. But she had raised my little brother, and he went to New Mexico with her. So my grandfather stayed to live with us, but there reached a time when he couldn't help either. So the solution was to send me to government Indian school. I went to Seneca Indian School at Wyandotte, and went there from grades 4. I was there in 4th grade, went home for the 5th grade, and then returned at midterm in 6th grade, and graduated from there after 9th grade. Then my brother had attended Chilocco, and he still had 1 year to go. Actually he had 2 years. He graduated in 56, so I had 1 year here with him. And then that was it. By the time I was here a year, it was home. It was home. The home I had left was wonderful, full of love and support and all. But I grew to love the Indian school, at Seneca. It was wonderful. And we learned so much. I think that was one thing, we had the support of all the teachers, the dorm, what do you call them, matrons. And I feel like I just flourished here. And I'd never known, up to that time, when I went away to Seneca, living with 50 girls in a dorm, but it was so, it became so, we were so close. I had so many sisters there, and a lot of them came to Chilocco the same time I did. But I'm thankful to Chilocco. You gotta fix that one. And one thing I tell my children,
it totally is casual,
is I wish they had had a chance to come. I truly do. I think that it matured us, that we learned responsibility and purpose. And when we left here, we could get a job from what we learned here, you know. And I was pre-college, and they helped me every way they could. So I went to Oklahoma State.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So what were some of the differences between Seneca and coming to Chilocco?
Basically the same, you know, the same system. Get up in the morning and clean your room, and if you had, go to the kitchen at 5 o'clock in the morning and help with breakfast. Same thing we had here. So we had experience in all aspects of it. So, and it was the same there.
So what about you, Ramona? You want to talk about how you ended up here?
Yes. My background was quite different. I am the youngest of 8, and when I was about 3 years old, my mother got tuberculosis, and my dad had the responsibility of taking care of us. But he and my mother were ultimately divorced, and it was just difficult for him to take care of us. So I have an uncle and an aunt who began a search for, you know, place. They were very good to us and took care of us, like surrogate parents. But there were a couple of schools. There were government schools, Jones Academy and Wheelock. And they thought first of putting us in, the girls and the boys, and they did not want to separate us. And I'm so happy that they didn't want to, because we then went to Goodland Indian Orphanage. It was an orphanage then. It was a Presbyterian orphanage, and at Hugo, Oklahoma. It's in Choctaw Nation, southeastern Oklahoma, and I'm half Choctaw. My mother was full blood.
Okay.
And and she says full blood and a little bit running over. She was so honored and proud of her Indian heritage. And excuse me, so they took the ones who were old enough to be in school to Goodland. And I was only 3 years old, so I spent an entire year apart from my siblings, and staying with a grandparent, and I loved her dearly. She loved me very much, and it was a good time in my life. But I just missed my siblings so much. I was told that I cried for a year, and I was so lonely. So when I turned 4, my uncle and aunt, they were taking us back to school, and they tell my oldest brother and my sister says, okay, take her in with you. We think you probably can make more of a difference in getting her in. So, because I wanted to just desperately to be with them and go to school there. And because my age was, hardly an acceptable thing for me. But my sister goes in, my brother go into the superintendent and said, we want to get her into school. And they said, well, why? And my brother said, well, because she cries all the time. And they said, oh, we don't need someone to cry. What do you mean she cries? Oh, no, she cries for us. Once she's here, she won't cry anymore. And so anyway, they did allow me to stay there. And it was a school, there were 200 kids there. We had 3 dorms, girls, boys split. And it was a wonderful environment. Actually, the school was set up in such a way that it was near a public school. The public school was on the same campus as the housing, the residential part, but run independently. The public school, of course, was state-run, and the other was run by the Oklahoma Synod, Presbyterian Synod of Oklahoma, and they supported us wholly. And it was a very, very spiritual environment, as you can expect that it might be. And I felt that I became, very grounded in my Christian faith. And we had, it was run, just like, I guess any faith-based school. might be we were expected to go to Sunday school and church and our evening devotion and always prayer, after, before meals. And so it was very Christ oriented.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a good experience for me, because there I accepted Jesus as my Savior, and that has been, and Christ has been my guideline all my life.
Mm-hmm.
So not only did they provide an education for us, I feel, showed us the way of Christ and
Mm-hmm.
showed us the light there, and that to me was very, very important. I stayed there with my two brothers that were remaining. The others had, since graduated. So when we were in 8th grade, one brother was kept back, not when he was in 8th grade, but earlier in our time. He was kept behind to stay with me. There was no child left behind, and they weren't going to leave. They weren't going to leave me behind, and so they held him back a grade to stay with me.
Oh, gosh.
I know.
Did you know that was going on?
No, I did not. I didn't know exactly that was happening. And he was so thrilled he was going to move up with my other brother who had failed. And so he was in 2nd grade, and they said, "Oh, no, buddy, you come back here." and he never made any reference at all to say, that, "Well, you made me stay back a year." There was never any grievance over that at all. But then it was apparent that we were going to be coming to Chilocco, and we liked that because even though it was a 12-year school at Goodland, it still was a good time for us to be coming to Chilocco. There was really so much more to offer, but I'm telling you, it was really a cultural shock for me, because at that time I was only 12 years old.
Oh.
In the 9th grade,
Yeah.
and so I'm in these big dorms, whereas it had been a very sheltered environment with 200 kids.
Mm-hmm.
And then we come to where there's 1,000 kids. And it was, in my first year, I stayed in my dorm all year long, just about. I was so much of a recluse.
What year did you come here?
And 54.
Mm-hmm.
And 54, so I was here 54 through 58.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And so that year was almost a non-existent year for me. I just slept and stayed in my dorm and ate and went to class and hardly studied at all.
Mm-hmm.
But I did have the support of my two brothers who were here that are just older than I am. And so we were here, and when I went to the sophomore year, the 10th grade, I had a tremendous sociology, psychology instructor, D.L. Gregory.
Mm-hmm.
And I attribute so much to him for where I am,
Mm-hmm.
in my life's journey.
Mm-hmm. What did he do for you?
He gave me advice about college, and he would just give me a lot of positive input, inspiration.
Mm-hmm.
He gave me some direction that I hope that I could just reach some goals that I never really expected to. Being very young, I just did not even think of my future years. Because by that time, then I'm 13, and I wasn't thinking in terms of what my future was going to be. But he told me, or he had written something in my yearbook. He said, "I remember when Miss Arrington, who was our English teacher, asked he asked her what she knew about Ramona Williams and her two siblings, and said, well, I know that they came, from a Presbyterian children's home in Choctaw Nation." And he said, Miss Arrington said, "I don't know a lot about them. I know they came, from this background." And she said, "But I do know that her eyes dance like she is full of mischief. And granted, I was not, and I just wasn't. But I don't know, there are just various things and there were just words of encouragement.
Mm-hmm.
He was a great teacher for everyone. He was. And I remember when we went on a field trip to Winfield, and there was a state, mental institution there, and so we had a tour, a field trip there, and it was rather interesting, and not rather, it's very interesting, and it was just nice to have had that as part of our schooling training. However, I joked with him years later. I said, Mr. Gregory, while we were touring the mental institutions, I said, did it ever occur to you that people were driving around our oval and our campus and looking at us too, just as though we did other people? And this is true. It wasn't uncommon to have people drive around and they would be looking at us, and we would be looking like we were in a zoo or something. And we always knew when there were visitors on campus like that, just driving by very slowly. But
Is that just because they knew about Chilocco and they wanted to see what was going on here?
my theory has always been that when you drive by the highway
Mhm.
and you see this mile tree-lined drive,
Mhm.
they had to have been curious in this beautiful archway. Chilocco Indian Agricultural School.
Mhm.
You have to wonder what is at the end of that tree-lined drive.
Mhm.
So you drive down here, and it's a beautiful campus. My grandchildren came in even with the disrepair in the school structures and everything. Oh, they were so impressed with the physical nature of the environment and everything. And she said, "Oh, I could have lived here." And I wish that I could convey to her and to my grandchildren what a wonderful experience it was.
Mhm.
Oh my, and the camaraderie. And consider that we're here 9 months out of the year with all these kids. It was just a very communal environment.
Mhm.
But we were like brothers and sisters.
Mhm.
We were, and we were of the heart. And Nancy and I became friends when we were sophomores.
So when you were 13,
Mhm.
Nancy, how old were you at that? Were you the same age group? That seems very
Probably
young.
14.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
I graduated at 17. She did at 16.
16.
Okay, so within
Mhm.
a year.
Mhm.
So did you begin the same year? Did you begin in 56?
No, I went there from 10th to 12th, and she was there 9th to 12th.
I see. So you started in 1956 then?
Yeah, fall of 55.
Oh, fall of 55, okay, I see. Oh, so you all got to know each other then. How did you all
Oh,
meet? Do you
yes.
remember getting to know each
Oh,
other?
yes.
Don't tell.
Oh, my first chance meeting with Nancy was when we were sophomores. For some reason, I'm not sure how they went about, how the supervisor went about selecting roommates, and it was random, I guess. I don't know, or maybe they had a method. But I was in sort of a ward-like room, and there were 5 older girls. And I always thought very worldly. Of course, everybody to me was worldly because I was just the youngest. So one night, and we had assemblies, we had movies, we had various things that we could attend. And so it was probably movies, some entertainment. And my roommate says, "Let's just all stay home and listen to music." Okay. Where are we going to get a record player? I don't know. Who has one? Nancy Tyner has one. Who's going to ask her to borrow it? Ramona, you ask her. All right. I go ask her if I can borrow her record player. And she says, "I'm sorry, I don't lend it to anyone."
Not like that.
So anyway, I go back and says, "All right, I failed. Anybody else want to go try?" And they weren't about to. So anyway, then And then that's always been my story, you know. You don't have a part in that one. And then along comes baseball season. And we had a TV about this size in the lobby. And the lobby was very, very nice. It was nice, clean, spacious. And so we would hurry home from lunch during the World Series. And as the luck would have it, she liked the Dodgers and I liked the Yankees. So here we were, at odds again. But before it was all over, we decided, since we had a common interest, that we could be friends when we came back the next year, when we came back our junior year. And so it was.
Ever since.
We have had a wonderful, lifelong experience, friendship, sisters of the heart, anything you can think of. That's, you know, that's the kind of relationship we have.
Yeah, Jerry asked me out there, you know, where's Ramona? At the other end of the umbilical cord. when you see one of us, they always say, where's the other? You know? But it was funny.
And we're always asked, where's Nancy? Where's Ramona?
Mm-hmm.
Not far behind.
Yeah, we're not supposed to be by ourselves, I guess.
Was it like that in school then, from
yes.
sophomore year on?
Absolutely,
Yes,
absolutely.
immediately, beginning of junior year, we were inseparable.
In home economics, we made little blue and white check pinafores, and we wore those to the FFA or something, some kind of a dance, 4-H dance or something other. There we were in our little check pinafores. We loved it. We loved it.
And I was 16. I was probably 16 years old. It looked like Judy Garland.
And we look at pictures in our yearbook, and it was customary for us to borrow clothing, you know, because nobody ever had very much. And some of the pictures I see her in one outfit, and then the next picture I see me in the same one.
The same yearbook.
Oh, but
Yeah, in one yearbook, I know I had that little furry collar, you know,
Mhm.
there were like 3 or 4 of us in the
Same one.
Not in the
Same
yearbook.
Just one take
But
off
that's
and
the
trade
way
it
it
down.
was, that's what it
Uh-huh.
was, yeah.
But it was just a bond that was formed, not because it's anything you made happen. It just happened because of our environment. And it was such a wonderful experience being here, as far as I'm concerned, because we were taught to be so responsible. We had to be. We just learned to be self-sufficient and responsible, and those have been lifetime values.
Respect
that-
authority, I think.
Yeah.
That's one big thing.
Just a regard for mankind generally.
But we kept our Indian humor. It
Mhm.
was fun.
Mhm.
The times we were together.
Do you have an example of how you kept your Indian humor?
We were talking about that last night, weren't we? You know, it's just different from other cultures. I've always said the funniest stories you can tell is something dumb that you did, you know, or so, and you can laugh right along with everybody else. It's not like something you would hide it. If it's funny, you're going to tell it, you know. That's one thing I admire about them. They find humor in everything. But they don't necessarily show it, you know, outside the group when they're together. It's fun to be with a bunch of Indians.
Yeah, and we're not at all afraid to tell stories on ourselves. It's just self-deprecating humor that we all share, and it is just rampant with all of us. But then there was some of that was exacted upon us too by the guys. Do you remember we would do raspberries, and some of them were so good you could hear from one end of the campus all the way to the other, and I wasn't so shabby at it myself, but yeah, I thought it was an art, so I practiced it quite diligently.
I wasn't enrolled in that course.
I know, but you were a part of it.
Was this like stealth or something? You'd sneak up on somebody? Describe this to me.
No, the raspberries. Oh, you just make these sounds like.
No, worse.
But when we would walk, we had guys that would be
Hidden
invisible.
somewhere. Yeah.
And we would be walking and they would go,
Every step, every
and
step.
yeah, and just really laugh.
So we
And-
grab each other and say, oh my gosh, what are you gonna do? Run.
and then they would speed it up.
Slow down, walk slowly. We never knew who it was.
We suspected, but I look back at that.
I think
and
there were 2 or 3, well, maybe there were 2 or 3 doing it.
Probably everybody took turns doing it, all the guys.
And you know, the thing was, we were always alone.
Right.
I don't know why, I guess we were always late.
Uh-huh.
But we always had alone. Going to class late.
So that happened more than once?
Oh, always.
Every day.
Always, anytime we were at.
For the year.
Yeah, but I look back at that now as they had enough confidence in our friendship, in our relationship, so that they knew we would not be angry or upset, because, you know, I think it could affect some people in a very negative way. We just laughed about, if we hadn't laughed at it, darn it, they really would have stopped doing it, but we would get tickled just like we do now. And we'd put our arms like, come on, okay, well, let's stop. And they would stop, and we'd take a step. And then we'd say, well, let's get out of here. Then surely they're gonna go, and then we'd run and then speed it up.
Right in time, every step of the way.
And I don't know if anybody else who's been in that position, that a bunch of guys would do that. So, and I think it's unique to Chilocco, actually.
And you
I
know,
think it is.
I think we're somehow less sophisticated, less mature in a lot of ways, you know, kind of naive. But I think, and you were the youngest, and I was close to the youngest. And I think there was kind of a thing with these guys that we were little sisters. You
Yeah.
know, they were just playing, but it was funny.
And then they put a pair of lingerie on the sidewalk when they knew we were coming in. And they had some underwear, they were just no cotton panties, nothing, nothing too suggestive, but laid them on the sidewalk because we were late coming to class. And it was in the administration building, and the one classroom was a little lower, and you know, just eye level, they could see out the.
Watch the sidewalk.
To see
Right.
what you
And
do.
us.
Yeah, and they put them out, so well, I know they said, watch Nancy and Mona when they come in here. And we were walking and just talking, and we looked down and we said, ooh, and we jumped across the sidewalk, both of us.
Jumped over.
And then
we could see the
skated-
faces down there.
Yeah, and they were all laughing. So just goofy things that you can't even imagine that would go on like that, and just made for a lot of cohesiveness and warm feelings, and that's why it is so exciting to come back. And you hear the same stories, and they're as funny as they were the first time they ever happened.
Oh my gosh.
Uh-huh.
We've heard them all and laugh. Same way every time. Yeah, it's great. And even now, you know, when we get together, you'll see a difference, I think, in the way we are, you know, how we are in public. But we get a bunch of us in a room.
Yeah.
That is fun.
So what, do you all come back to the reunions often? Is this something you try and do annually, or?
We have been coming back for, I'd say 25 years.
And it's on our calendar. And unless we can't work around it for any reason, we are here.
We've missed 1 or 2 times.
You're right.
Inevitably, but.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
it's just, you know, even my husband, you know, I said to him, you want to go along? And he said, oh, no. One of our classmates, Charlie McDonald, would invite us. He invited us twice. He lives in Grand Isle, Louisiana, and he invited our class, any of us, you know, to go down. So I asked my husband, you know, I said, why don't you go with us, you know? He had never gone to one of the reunions here because Bill had come and told him what went on.
So your husband warned him off? Is
Yeah,
that right?
yeah. And Bill didn't come back for a long time. But no, my husband said, no, I won't. And he said, if I went, I don't really know anybody, I would cramp her style. He said that was one of my sayings, And, I really appreciated that because it's true. I wouldn't be able to be in there laughing and carrying, although he enjoyed it when we were down there at Charlie's.
Mm-hmm.
But I would be more concerned about, is he lonely? Do I need to go over, and so I appreciated that very much. And Bill learned after one time that was a good idea.
He said he felt like Custer.
Yeah.
I said, good. I can stay home.
But we told some of those crazy stories down there in Grand Isle. Oh
Yeah.
my gosh. I looked over at Bill one time, he was crying. He was
I know.
laughing so
Oh, yeah.
hard.
He always enjoyed
And that was the time when we were telling stories about ourselves, things that we did. I remember that story.
Oh, yes.
Oh,
Oh,
but,
yes. Mhm.
Yeah, it's very special.
Yeah.
It really is.
What are some of the things that you all did? For example, did you do vocational training, or what was your work duty and things like that? Did you have sort of assigned spaces
yes.
on campus?
From the time we woke up.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm. Each of us was assigned, or I don't know, I can't remember whether we were allowed to choose several vocations, and from several vocations. And there was just about anything that you would want. We have a song that we wrote and sang at our 50th reunion, and it was written to the music of Moments to Remember,
Mm-hmm.
which was our class song. And we talked about, how'd that thing go? The guys, we ran Chilocco. The boys milked the cows, we did this, and all the things that we had to do. They ran the power plant, they did the farming, they did the baking, we cooked, we did everything. And they would move you around, you had your chores, move you from kitchen for 6 weeks, and then they would move you to laundry. She knows about the laundry. She got it all the time. But different areas of the campus, and you would work for 6 weeks. Usually before class, wasn't it?
Some, depending on
Yeah.
where you were assigned.
Yeah,
Some of it could have been done before.
And then go to school. They had cosmetology, restaurant management, all sorts of things for a bunch of Indian kids. Then, we were good. You'd hear the kids talk about what they did, when they got out. They had jobs waiting in 1958.
What did you all participate in specifically? Do you remember? Was there something? I guess you said you did college prep, but
Yeah.
both of you?
Both of us.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I went to Northeastern State at Tahlequah.
Did you?
Mhm. Met my husband, the love of my life there, the one that felt like Custer. He's a one-dropper. He's that much Cherokee.
I see.
Oh yeah, my sister calls them one-drop Indians. So
I
that would be him. And so we graduated one day and were married the next.
Ah.
In fact, it was just May 26th was our 56th year anniversary.
Oh, really?
Mhm.
That's right, yeah.
Right, and yours is
2 days
tomorrow.
from now, the
Okay.
3rd.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right. And our lives have been intertwined. Nancy has a daughter named after me and another daughter named after me, and I had a son and I didn't want to name him Nancy, so I just birthed him on her birthday.
Oh.
She did, she called and said, yeah, we had a son. She said, but Nancy, I can't name him Nancy. So I did the next best thing and had him on your birthday.
That was before the days of playing with the dates. It was just,
Magic.
just
Yeah, it was
yeah,
magic.
right, it was.
Were you all geographically located close together after you graduated Chilocco?
No,
No?
never were we really.
We were from Oklahoma to Illinois, and then from Missouri to Venezuela, and to whatever distant parts of the country that she went to and
Oh, yeah.
traveled to with her
Yeah.
husband
Yeah.
and family. But you just make it a point to
Mhm.
keep close ties. You do.
Mhm.
We don't like change or do change or anything. My husband and I have lived in Seneca for 48 years as soon as he got out of school, and we went there to live,
Mhm.
and have one son, and we still just have one son, so we don't like change. Have the same husband, same son, same friends, but this was just sort of a learning, a teaching institution, a learning
Mhm.
institution. And what I liked so much about it was that the young people then could go out the next day, fill out an application for a job, and get a job. It doesn't happen like that now.
Yeah.
It just doesn't, and so there were so many degree kids that didn't have the opportunity that we have, that they can work. And that was another thing Mr. Gregory did for me. He said that I had been placed in the home economics curriculum.
Mhm.
And he said, I feel like when you come back to school, he said, you really need to be in the college prep curriculum. He said, so you might see about getting that changed, and that's what I would recommend for you. And I did exactly that, and I would not otherwise have probably pursued college had he not done that.
Well, who put you in the home economics track? Do you remember that?
I think that we were probably selected maybe by various instructors, maybe advisors, is what I'm thinking. They would see us day in and day out, and probably felt that these were the things that would best be a fit for us, that would be best fit for these particular areas. And as far as really knowing, I don't even think that was anything that we were so concerned about. I would have just gone right ahead and been in home economics, and now, shoot, I'd probably be the head chef of the Hilton or somewhere in New York City instead.
I'm sure you would have done something equally exciting.
Oh, good.
You would have done, what you were expected to do.
Right.
Take your courses and excel in them.
Right, and just do the best you can. And so, but anyway, with the change, I went to Chilocco, and there were opportunities. I stayed at Sequoia, another Bureau of Indian Affairs school, for my room and board, and went to Chilocco and stayed there for a year, and then finished the rest of my schooling there. Did not live on campus there, but that was a nice arrangement. It was a good arrangement because it made us aware of the fact that we could get an education, and it wasn't difficult. We just had to make the effort to get through school. So that was another benefit of the Bureau of Indian Affairs schools.
So was that common to have students stay at, for example, Sequoia and go to school at Northeastern?
Yes.
There were several of them there.
Right.
Were there, I know.
And I have another lifelong friend who was with me. We were roommates at Northeastern,
Oh, I see.
and she's an accountant and had a very, very good life. But we loved it. We rode at an Army issue bus that was so old, and it was gray. And we had to go in at 8 o'clock, and we were back home at 4, regardless of how many classes you had. And we just called it the Old Gray Ghost. We go get on the Old Gray Ghost and go into town, and it was a means of getting an education, and it worked for us.
Right.
Uh-huh.
It's still, because it seems like if you graduated from Chilocco at 16, you were still very young when you went to college too.
Right, 20 when I
When you
graduated.
graduated. Was there any, because you would have still been a minor at that point, did you have people, maybe I'm looking for a stronger word than mentor, but were there still people who were sort of making sure that you were thriving and
No. I mean, it was like any other college environment, I guess. You just, I think with the guidance, with the schooling, the training, I think it offered a sense of maturing. You matured much more quickly out of necessity. You became self-sufficient. Regardless of the age, you knew that you had to grow up, so to speak. You were going to have to make decisions for yourself, and it was very important that we learn these things, and they were very, very ingrained on a day-to-day business, day-to-day basis. That they were a part of our livelihood, a part of our life, a part of our future. It was like we didn't have an option. There were no options. This is what you had to do, and it was a mindset, and we knew, and we didn't challenge it. There was no need to, because it was a good life.
Interesting, yeah. Well, it sounds like you did have some good leadership here.
Oh, yes.
Very good. Do you know, I was always of the opinion that the people who were in the Bureau of Indian Affairs Service, for the most part, were here because they wanted to be, not because they had to be. And I think they love the work, they love the opportunity to work with their own people. And so many of them, Mr. Gregory was, it never occurred to me that he had life outside of here, but it never, I don't even know what tribe Indian he was, but he was Indian. I'm thinking Cherokee, do you know?
No.
And wasn't really much older than we were. I mean, he probably graduated from school like at 24, 25, and here he was teaching these kids, and so good. Oh my, his heart was just in it, and he was just one of so many who were here.
Mr. McCarty.
Absolutely.
He was,
he was the principal, and I think Mr. Wall was superintendent.
Right. Right. But he was one that really watched over us for some reason, He would call us into his office and say, I want to talk to you girls.
The both of you together?
Yes, because we were, and whatever we got in trouble for, or what, he would call, I've heard this or that, and I think you really need to apply yourselves, and consider the consequences of what you do. It was mischief. It was crazy mischief. We got put up to it by a lot of people,
Like what kind of mischief? I know the pranks people pulled on you, but...
I just remember one time, well, I don't know where we were out on campus, somewhere. Big old bone like that. Remember that one? Big bone about that long, probably a leg bone or something. And we were looking at that. Let's go put it by Mrs. Robinson's door. She was our
door matron.
Yeah. So we just had the trash basket by our door, and she stuck that bone in there, You don't remember that?
Vaguely, you must have been with somebody else.
No,
You're on
no.
a friend.
That's probably something he called us in the office to mention to us. But we could wait to see where that bone would be in the morning, And so we went, no, it wasn't in the basket, but she had laid it somewhere. I said, grab that bone. And that night it went back in the basket. Just stupid
mischief.
Yeah, we didn't do anything bad. We really didn't.
Peanut butter fights at night.
Oh, we
until the
did.
lights were out.
How does that work?
Oh,
You want us to show you?
Maybe not personally.
But we used to get the food in
the commodities. In the
from the
cans,
commodities.
yeah.
So you get a can of peanut butter, 5 pounds of butter type stuff. And I don't even know how we may have swiped it. But we had.
It was Linda Levi's.
Oh, really? Was
She
it?
got commodities and brought them.
She
was
was.
my roommate. Yeah,
Oh, okay,
yeah.
so we took her peanut
Mhm.
butter. We had another roommate. And she had been my friend from, I probably met her in 4th grade. And we were very good friends when we were at Seneca. And so we were friends, the 3 of us,
Mhm.
at that point. And we roomed together. And we said, let's
get Laverne with the peanut butter when she comes in. This was after lights were already out.
Yes.
It was quiet in bed.
Mhm.
So we were talking.
Yes, we were in there with the peanut butter.
I know.
Wait till she walks in, she opened the door, walked in, we have another, she said, oh, no, she grabbed some and it was on us.
So then we were just attacking each other and
that sort of stuff is what we did.
So you had to have gotten caught from that.
not that time, no, we were we were way at the end of the hall.
Yeah.
And we were very quiet with our mischief in that way. And then we had these big utility sinks. And so we went in what we call the mop room. We were in there washing, getting all the peanut butter off us for the next day.
That's what I was wondering, how you get cleaned
Yeah,
up.
when
Yeah.
when it was lights out, it was lights out. There was a
Uh-huh.
master switch.
Uh-huh.
So we were in the dark there.
Oh, yeah.
But
And we put
that was fun.
rice in our roommates' beds and other beds.
Short cheater.
Yeah.
We used to short
Just
cheater.
things like that. And if people wanted things done, they would say, go get Nancy and Mona, they'll do it.
And we would. Oh, yeah.
And we
Good
just do
old
that.
days.
Uh-huh. No wonder everyone in your class knows.
Yeah,
still,
right.
still looks around to see where
Here
you're
they
at, what's
come.
behind your shoulder.
Yeah, watch
Yeah,
back.
right.
It was just
Oh,
fun. It
my.
really was. It was just.
Mm.
And we travel together. We've been many places, foreign countries.
Mhm.
And independent, rent our car and we're gone,
Mhm.
Don't know where we're gonna be tonight or, anything. But it's so much fun.
Mhm.
It is.
Oh, I know, yeah, it's lots of fun. Oh, it is, we have a great time.
Well, Nancy, I'm curious what you did after graduation. I haven't heard that piece of it yet.
Yeah, well, I got married. We went up to University of Illinois where he was.
Did you get
he
married
went to-
after Chilocco?
After my junior year in college.
Oh, okay. After you
Yeah, at Oklahoma State, yeah. So we went to Illinois. He graduated, and he graduated a couple of years before me, and he got a teaching assistant
Mhm.
job at the University of Illinois in accounting and finance. And so we went up for that, and then when I went back to Oklahoma, I think he came down for the summer and worked on his master's. And then he finished his master's, went back up there, and he got his doctorate. And he became a professor there. And then he was asked, let's see, our first assignment, University of Houston, I think, had contacted University of Illinois and asked if they would be interested in working with the government contract, USAID contract, to develop a business school in Ecuador. And they said yes, and they asked my husband to head that
Wow.
our part of that down there. So we went there, and we were there 2 years, 1 year on the coast and 1 year in Quito in the mountains. Back to the States, we were there probably a couple of years, but my husband made contacts in Venice, in Ecuador, with some other people who were going to go to the Dominican Republic and work with it was after the overthrow of Trujillo. And they asked if they could send him down there. And we went to Santo Domingo. We were there a year. by that time I had 2 daughters. And I actually have a son, actually, who was born down there. So he could have a Dominican passport if he wanted. In fact, we had to give him a Venezuela, I can say Venezuela, my husband's Venezuela. But we had to apply for a Dominican passport, which he still has, in order for him to leave the country. And he was about 8 months old when we left there. And back to university, then we were sent to Tunisia for the same thing, to work with the University of Tunisia, to set up the thing. And then we went back home, and then someone said, yeah, one of his buddies, hey, why don't you take a leave, come down here and work in Venezuela. So we went down there for 3 or 4 years, and he worked with the hydroelectric company, government, it was government owned and operated, to build dams and things like that, and he was a financial part of it. We went back to to Illinois, and he just decided, that college life wasn't for him, and he resigned. Another friend, college friend of his and mine, had gotten a job at OPEC. And he asked my husband if he wanted to come down and be part of the OPEC delegation. So he did that, and it's been exciting.
Yeah.
But that's what I did after graduation.
Crisscross the globe.
Pretty much,
Yeah.
yeah.
So that is really interesting because both of you all have done, you've done interesting things and you've been involved, obviously, like you said, you've had different life stations, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you still keep in close contact, that's obvious.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, I hear a lot of people say that they meet other Chilocco alumni all over the place.
Mhm.
Do you all find that true? Do you run into people who've gone to Chilocco or make that connection with anyone when you're
I haven't.
away from campus?
I haven't.
No.
I have a Chilocco, just a little cloth bag that was given when we went to Albuquerque.
Mhm.
And when we had the meeting there, and it's just kind of special, and I carry it, and here I am just carrying this little bag from a wrestling
Uh-huh.
tournament
Uh-huh.
in Coral Junction, north of Joplin,
Mhm.
and I carried it. He said, "Chilocco," and I said, "Yes." I said, "You know Chilocco?" He said, "Oh yes, he's had a good friend who was a teacher there," and so that's not uncommon.
Yeah, that was,
Yeah.
you could hear,
Yeah.
but around here.
Here,
I
right, it doesn't
never
happen
heard
so much on
any
it.
of that.
And it's always interesting because when you meet someone from Chilocco, it's just like it's an instant bond. It's just like a magnet. You want to know, how are you involved? Who do you know? What did you do? And it just is. It's just a magnet that just draws you right together. And it's just like, there's something inside of it because it's so energy charged. I've got to know this person, and
That's
it's a
true,
good
even
feeling.
in Indian.
Yeah.
Native American,
Very,
you
very,
get
very
interested,
good.
except like those people on the ship.
True.
What happened?
That's just,
Mhm.
we took a cruise, and we were seated at a table, was one of the special restaurants on board the ship, and you were just put with whatever seats were available. So they put us at a table with a couple, and we sat down. Oh, good evening, good evening. I'm so and so, and I'm so and so, and this is my husband, and we're attorneys. We graduated from Harvard, and we met, working in Boston or wherever it is. Here's our whole life story, and we're. It was funny because we'd just take a bite, and oh man, she was so proud and everything. And she said, she said, "You two are friends?" We said, "Yeah, we've been friends for years." And how did you meet? Well, we usually say since childhood, which is true. Oh, and where did you meet? We met in school. Anyway.
Interrogation.
Yeah, the interrogation began. Yes, it was a boarding school. Oh, where was it? Well, it was in Oklahoma. And then it came out, it was not your ordinary boarding school. Oh, you're Native Americans, yes. And this sort of stuff. And eventually it came down to, well, she wanted to know what tribe and all this stuff. And then she said, oh, tell me, what did you do on the reservation? This one, I don't know how she did it. Didn't skip a beat, said, I was a go-go dancer. And so, look at what is okay. I said, I was a blackjack dealer. So the woman said, oh, I guess that wasn't very politically correct, was it? We said no. That was the end of table conversation for us, They were embarrassed. I think, what ignorance,
Yeah.
Don't they know we're just like everybody else? Just fortunate enough to have the experiences we had here.
Right, exactly.
Yeah,
That is right. That is
It is.
indicative.
Yeah,
Yeah.
really. It's that we don't have to be like them. We don't have to go to Harvard. We learned it all at Chilocco.
That's right. But, well, we went to this here school. And,
Yeah.
Well, actually, that leads me to one of the questions I think it's important to ask. What do you want people outside of Chilocco to know? Like, what do you think that the legacy of this campus, but also the community, really is? Like, people who are not familiar with it at all, what do you think that's important for them to understand?
It was, for many of us, it was a haven. You hear the kids talk about the conditions they lived in and everything. Well, they were very poor. Living outside areas where it was easy to get to school, things like that. It was life-saving, I think, in a lot of ways. I know, the first year at Oklahoma State, and the kids learned there in the dorm, that I went to Chilocco. Sometime during that year, one of the girls in the dorm said, our sociology professor told us that Chilocco was, what would you call them? Juvenile delinquency place. Reform school. A reform school for Indians. And I said, that's not true. And she said, well, that's what he told us. And so we've asked the guys. I think they did send a few kids, remember? Charlie was saying that. For disciplinary reasons, which could have worked out very well if they could have fit in, and been part of the rest of us. So, but you have that at public school. But anyway, I would just like them to know that it was like any other high school, only better. There was so much, it was family, and I know people can't understand that. It was so special. And I think, we talk about it all the time, there are a lot of successful classmates from our class right around there.
Krispy Kreme.
Yeah, and from before, the Krispy Kreme, right? There's been a lot of success. And, a lot of them wouldn't have known it had it not been for being here.
Anything to add?
And the friendships that were formed here still exist 60 years after we were in class together. And when people hear that, they say to me, I've never heard of such a thing, that you're still together. I say, exactly like we were 60 years ago. That's something very few people got to ever experience.
I think that people need to be aware that the government boarding schools were a result of many of the treaties with the Indian tribes. They were a very honorable, extremely intelligent, only because they did not speak English were they able to be duped, but they had enough knowledge, it was a challenge for the tribes, who were moved, but they wanted education. It was very, very important, not just in the last 100 years. Prior to that, education was such a vital part of their existence, and they could see, into the future and knew that this is how our tribes were going to survive, how the Indian tribes. So as a result, it became important that the government establish, and that was a part of the treaties, the educational systems. And I would like for people to know that this wasn't something that was just a handout to us, that it was something that was provided for us, and that we took advantage of what was there. We utilized it, and we have become successful as a result of our forefathers, of our ancestors, having the foresight to have this in place for us. That just means so much to me. And I will say too that a good part of my life, about 25 years of my life, have been spent helping other kids. I served on the Board of Trustees for Missouri Baptist Children's Homes. I've worked with the Children's Home probably for about 40 years, and I've been on the board and traveled faithfully every 3 months from Joplin to St. Louis for all of those, rarely missing a meeting, to be on the board for the Children's Baptist Children's Home. And it was just something I felt led to do. I felt that it was I just felt that I was convicted by the Holy Spirit to, hey, do something instead of being so isolated in your own home, so preoccupied with what you're doing here. There are other people who need what you've had. And so as a result, I've done that. I've done a lot of community service just with kids. My husband and I both have. He went to the University of Missouri School of Dentistry and then specialized in periodontal surgery. And so his place in life and his training and everything has allowed me, the flexibility. I worked in his office, for all of these years doing insurance. And so that's something we never had to worry about, one aspect about it. So, but in the interim, I did a lot of community service work. And I never thought that there would be anything other than, our mission statement, which was serving God by helping children, youth, and their families in crisis, helping them to make a lasting difference. And that's what Chilocco did for me. It made a lasting difference in my life. And 2 years ago, I had just the greatest honor imaginable. I was inducted into the Hall of Fame for Chilocco. And then last year, a real plus, I think I was probably as excited about Reggie being inducted. The brother that was held back in school, he was inducted. And he had a lot of community service, so much that I did not even know about, in Idabel, which is in Choctaw Nation, southeastern Oklahoma. And he spent a huge part of his life serving the community. And then he was inducted last year, and I was extremely excited and just thankful and honored. They said it was the first brother-sister. They've had mother, daughter, father, daughter, sister, but we were the first brother-sister to be inducted, and it's all special. But that was just kind of a unique thing.
That is nice. Yeah, it's nice to have that recognition that they or paying attention enough as well. Whoever decides to be on the board, I guess that's sort of right. It comes down to Well, is there anything else you all want to add that I didn't ask you about that you think you just want people to know about or that you want to share?
I went to Washington, D.C. soon after the Museum of American Indian was created. Have you been there? And my husband was with me. And he came here with me one time for something. He wasn't part of the thing. But anyway, he was on campus with me. We were down in Stillwater. You know, it's easy to come up. But he has always, was always impressed, you know, with how I turned out, really, you know. He used to say, you know, and I say too, you know, how do you take this kid, you know, from who knows where, and give them the ambition and the common sense and you know, drive to be, you know, what they want to be. And anyway, I went into that museum, and there he was with me, and there was a guided tour that they would take you through to see all these exhibits of Indians and everything. And there was actually one, toward the end of this tour, one big board, you know, about Native American boarding schools. Have you been there?
Yes, I have, but I have not been deep enough to see.
Oh, well, it
yeah.
could have been something that wasn't there permanently, because there's so many things that turn over
It's a
in there.
gorgeous building.
Yeah, and she was telling about these boarding schools and everything. And she said, you know, that they were used, you know, to house incorrigible Indian youth and all this stuff, you know, and that they weren't treated kindly or anything, you know, that they were houses of horror, basically, you know. And I said, excuse me, you know. I said, I beg to disagree. I went to one of those schools, you know, and I went to Chilocco. And I said, you have your information completely wrong, because I can tell you what I knew. And my husband looked at me like,
You go, girl.
It really upset me, because here I'm thinking, people walk through from everywhere and they hear this. You know, I thought that was a great misjustice. I mean, this is just something she read or someone said to her. She didn't know, you know, real, what do you call it? Research into what they really were. I hope you've learned something.
Oh, an incredible amount. Yeah,
Good.
incredible amount.
But that was one thing that, and I want people to, I would just like people to know this, it wasn't that way. Not for us.
Do you know, I think there was a certain learning from each other. We were from all different backgrounds. We had so much to give, and we had so much to learn. And if you just open up, you know, your life and your mindset, your heart, your eyes, ears, all, you know, all of you, if you just open up, there's so much to learn. And there's many things from just so many kids that we were with. It just does something to mold who you are. And the same, you know, it really has been said, you know, with our friendship, because I just learned, you know, just because of our friendship from her and through her and through her life. And you know, you just grow, and it makes it so much easier to assimilate in so many different, you know, environments, and it just makes for, you know, a better way of life.
That's, you all shared really interesting information.
What did you like best?
The The raspberries.
Yeah, I was about to say, all the parts where you all laughed the entire way through where you told them. Well, if there's nothing else you all want to share at this point, I can go ahead and end it, although I'm happy to.
Yes, thank you very much.
Yes, we appreciate your time and your input and your, interest in knowing the real facts.
Yes.
of the
We
Bureau
talk
School,
about
very
these
schools.
things all the time. And when we get together with our friends, all this
Mhm.
comes up, and
Yeah,
Mhm.
it's just interesting.
I'm grateful for your time too. It's important to get so many different perspectives too.